They said the mountain had a pulse, not the tremor of rock or thunder, but something slower. A rhythm felt through the soles of your feet if you stood still long enough near its base. The locals called it El Santuario del Silencio, a narrow range in the Peruvian Andes where the air always smelled faintly of copper and rain. No birds flew over it. No one lived within sight of its slopes. The few shepherds who wandered too close said their flocks refused to climb higher than the tree line. At its center stood the ruins of a monastery built by Franciscan monks in the 1700s, half carved into the stone face of the mountain. The records called it Santa Veronica del Abismo. No one knew why it was abandoned, only that the church above still stood, a blackened husk with walls swallowed by moss and time. In 1954, the Peruvian government sent a geological survey team to the site. Officially, their goal was to assess mineral deposits before a proposed mining concession. Unofficially, the Ministry of Culture wanted to know if the rumors were true, that beneath the church there was a sealed chamber, built centuries earlier and never opened since. The team was small. 4 men and 1 woman, Dr. Elena Rivas, a structural archaeologist from Lima. Her father had been a priest. She didn't believe in curses, but she had learned to listen when silence grew too heavy. The ascent took 3 days. The trail narrowed until the path became more memory than road. When they reached the ruins, the temperature dropped as if they'd stepped inside a shadow. The sound of the wind stopped completely. Elena noted it in her log. No wind movement at elevation 4200 meter. Unusual acoustic stillness. Pressure shift possible. The others unpacked the instruments. They were old field devices, seismic meters, hand drills, oxygen lamps. One of the engineers, Ramirez, struck the church wall to test the density. The sound that came back was wrong. Not hollow, not solid, but delayed, as though the stone had absorbed the noise and released it an instant later. That night, while they camped beside the ruins, the air grew warmer. The lamps flickered, bending toward the mountain wall. Elena wrote again. Slight vibration in the ground, not seismic. Feels biological. At dawn, they began digging. Beneath the altar, they found a staircase cut into the bedrock, descending steeply in a spiral. It was dry, untouched, its air strangely cool. Halfway down, they reached a door. It wasn't wood or stone, but a composite of both. Fossilized timber fused with mineral veins, the surface smooth and almost metallic. Symbols were carved into it. Not Latin, not Quechua, but something geometric, repeating in mirrored patterns like a sequence of sound waves carved in relief. Ramirez pressed his ear to the surface. He said he could hear something faint, a hum, low and steady, like air moving through a throat. They tried to open it with tools, but the material wouldn't chip or crack. When they lit a lamp near it, the carvings caught the light and shimmered faintly, as though the stone remembered heat. Elena stepped forward, tracing one of the symbols with her fingers. It was cold. Then it pulsed. Once. The others froze. She stepped back. The hum grew louder, not through the air, but through their bodies. A vibration that moved through the ground, through the ribs, into the teeth. Then, from behind the door, came a single sound. Not a knock, not a voice, but something between the two. A breath drawn in, and then a whisper. Below, the lamps flickered and went out. When they relit them, the symbols were glowing faintly, their lines pulsing like veins under skin. The hum deepened until the air itself felt alive. Elena whispered, "It's responding." And for the first time, the mountain answered. A sound rolled upward through the stone, a long, low chord that shook the ground and seemed to bend time itself. Ramirez shouted that the rock was moving, but it wasn't the rock. It was the door. Slowly, impossibly, it was exhaling. When the door opened, it didn't creak or grind. It sighed, a long, slow exhalation that seemed to come from deep within the mountain's lungs. Dust rose in soft spirals, and the lamps dimmed as though the air itself had thickened. The space beyond was narrow, a descending corridor carved straight into the rock, its walls wet with condensation that shimmered under the lamplight. Every few meters, the stone curved in subtle, repeating patterns, forming ribs. Elena went first. Her boots left faint impressions in the thin layer of dust that had settled over the centuries. The deeper they went, the more the air pressed inward, as though gravity had doubled. Ramirez muttered behind her. "The air's too heavy. We shouldn't be this deep." Elena didn't answer. She had noticed something else. The echo. Each sound, each step, returned not once but twice. The second echo, lower, slower, delayed by fractions of a second. It was as though the corridor were repeating them in two voices. One human, one older. The stairs ended in a small chamber, perfectly round. The walls were polished smooth, their curvature too precise to have been made by hand. At the center stood a stone slab about the size of an altar, suspended slightly above the ground by what looked like thin veins of mineral. It shouldn't have been possible. The slab hovered, unmoving, silent, held up by something unseen. The instruments read no magnetic field, no air current, no temperature fluctuation. Yet when Ramirez extended his hand beneath it, the air bent visibly, like heat distortion. Elena circled the perimeter, her light falling across faint carvings that covered the walls. Concentric lines spiraling inward, repeating the same pattern as the symbols on the door above. Each line intersected at a single point directly above the altar. She stood there for a moment, listening. The hum had stopped, but her heartbeat felt heavier, as though sinking to something vast and slow beneath her feet. When she stepped closer to the slab, the temperature dropped sharply. Her breath turned to vapor. She reached out, hesitant, and touched the stone. It was warm. Behind her, one of the engineers whispered, "It's breathing." At first, she thought he meant her, that the sound was only the echo of their own movements. But then she heard it, faint, measured inhalations coming not from the chamber, but from within the rock itself. A deep, rhythmic respiration, as though the mountain had lungs. The air pressure changed. The lamps flickered blue, and then the slab began to move. Not up, not down, outward, unfolding in slow mechanical precision like petals opening. Beneath it lay darkness, perfectly circular, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. The sound that followed wasn't a voice, nor vibration, nor anything human. It was something that bypassed the ears entirely. A resonance that lived in the marrow. Each of them froze where they stood. In Elena's log, later recovered from the wreck of the camp, her last coherent entry reads, "The stone responded to contact. The air inside changed density. The sound feels alive. Not machine, not natural. It's aware." Moments after that entry, the handwriting changes. Lines less controlled, written in shaking strokes. "It's remembering us." The instruments recorded a burst of infrasonic energy lasting 22 seconds. The seismic sensors placed outside registered no tremor. When silence returned, only Elena's lamp still burned. Ramirez and the others were gone. No footprints led away. No disturbance in the dust. Only faint impressions, as if the air itself had been compressed where they'd stood. Elena stood alone in the glowing chamber, the stone slab now resealed, its surface smooth and cold once more. The hum was gone, but when she turned to leave, she realized something terrible. The corridor behind her had changed. It no longer curved upward. It was spiraling down. The passage that had once ascended now descended, sloping deeper into the mountain's core. The air was different, thicker, metallic, carrying the faint scent of blood and wet stone. Her lamp flickered with every breath she took. The flames seemed to strain forward, drawn toward the dark. Elena tried to call for Ramirez, but her voice didn't carry. The sound left her mouth and vanished halfway through the air, swallowed before it could echo. She whispered instead, but even whispers were devoured by the silence. Her notes would later describe it as an absence with weight. After 20 paces, she realized she was no longer alone. Footsteps followed hers, not behind or ahead, but beside her, perfectly synchronized. She stopped. They stopped. She stepped. They stepped. Each sound slightly delayed, as though someone were walking within the wall itself, tracing her path from the other side of the stone. Her hand brushed the wall. It was warm again. When she leaned close, she heard something faint. A whisper without voice, more movement than sound, like air shifting between syllables. The patterns were too regular to be random. Someone was speaking, but the words were trapped in the rock. She pressed her ear closer. The whisper matched her breathing. Every inhale brought sound. Every exhale, silence. She felt a pulse against the stone, not vibration, heartbeat. Her lamp dimmed. The light reflected faintly off something metallic embedded in the wall. Veins of copper and silver branching like nerves. They pulsed gently with dim golden light, in rhythm with the beat she'd felt. And then, without warning, the air around her moved. A gust swept upward from the floor, warm and damp, carrying a sound that was neither wind nor voice, but something between. The noise of air passing through an enormous throat. The walls trembled. The copper veins brightened. The voice came then, low and slow, rising from the depths of the spiral below her. "You came back." Eleanor froze. The words were clear, but the tone was not human. Too low, too smooth. Every syllable stretched and resonant as though spoken by the earth itself. She tried to answer, but her voice failed. Her chest ached from pressure. The sound wasn't entering her ears anymore. It was resonating inside her bones. She stumbled backward, clutching her throat. The lamp fell and shattered. Darkness folded over her. In the faint glow still pulsing from the wall, she saw motion. Faint silhouettes rippling just beyond the surface, like shadows trapped inside translucent stone. They were human, men and women. Dozens of them. Their faces barely formed, pressed outward as if frozen in mid-breath. She reached out, against reason, against instinct, and touched the wall. It was cold now. The hum stopped. The faces vanished. Then she heard a sound that froze her completely. It was her own voice, whispering from inside the stone. Eleanor. Her name echoed once, then again, overlapping in perfect synchrony until the wall around her seemed to breathe with it. Panic broke through reason. She ran down the spiral, desperate for light or exit or anything that wasn't breathing rock. The tunnel opened abruptly into a vast chamber, so wide the lamplight barely reached the edges. The floor was smooth, concave, carved with thousands of lines intersecting like veins of quartz. At the center stood another structure, a circular pit ringed by stone columns, each engraved with the same geometric patterns she'd seen on the door above. The air there vibrated faintly. She stepped closer. Inside the pit, something gleamed. Not light, but movement. A layer of liquid reflecting faint amber tones, rippling though no air stirred it. She knelt and held her lantern over it. The liquid mirrored her face. Then it changed. Her reflection blinked, but she hadn't. Its lips moved independently of hers, forming words she could almost hear. The surface rippled once, then stilled. From somewhere below, deep beyond the pit's reflection, came a slow inhale. Then her reflection smiled. Not all doors open out. The lamp went out. Darkness filled the chamber, and the mountain began to breathe again. The darkness wasn't absence. It was presence. A living density that pressed against her skin like warm water, swallowing every sound before it could form. Elena stood perfectly still, afraid to breathe. The air itself seemed conscious, listening. Somewhere beneath her, the pit exhaled again. The sound rolled upward in slow waves, like breath through hollow lungs. Each pulse bent the air, distorting it in visible shivers. Her hand trembled toward her pocket, searching for the spare match. The faint scrape of friction sounded impossibly loud in that silence. She struck it. The brief flare of light revealed the surface of the pit, trembling as if stirred from below. The reflection was gone, but the surface was no longer smooth. It moved, folding inward and outward, forming shapes, shallow ridges like lips trying to speak through the liquid. Then came the voice, not from around her, but beneath her, reverberating through the soles of her boots and into her bones. "Stay." The match died. Her pulse roared in her ears. She tried to step back, but the floor resisted, as if gravity had thickened. Her knees buckled. The pit pulsed once more, its surface glowing faintly amber. Something inside it was moving. Not a figure, not a body, just motion, spiraling gently upward, following the same rhythm she had felt since entering the mountain. 3 beats. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Then, a shape began to emerge from the center. Not rising, but condensing, light folding into form, edges sharpening until the surface bulged like stretched fabric. For an instant, She thought she saw her own outline, reflected but reversed, its movements half a second behind hers. When she stepped back, it leaned forward. Her hand shook uncontrollably. "What are you?" she whispered. The reply came as vibration rather than sound, a resonance inside her skull, the breath that built your world. Her knees gave out. She collapsed to the floor. The chamber brightened suddenly, illuminated not by light, but by the stone itself. The carved lines across the walls began to glow, one by one, tracing upward in spirals until the ceiling vanished into brightness. The patterns pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, or perhaps her heartbeat had begun to follow theirs. Every stone, every vein, every rib of the chamber moved as one, expanding and contracting in unison. The mountain was alive. The voice deepened, calm and absolute. "You opened what was meant to breathe, not to speak." Elena forced herself upright. The air trembled around her. "Where are the others?" she demanded, though her voice came out cracked, small. The mountain answered with sound instead of words, a single prolonged tone that carried both beauty and grief. The walls trembled, and from within them came shapes, faint human forms shifting behind the stone, faces emerging and retreating like breath through skin. She saw Ramirez among them, his mouth open as if mid-scream, eyes hollow, body perfectly still. They weren't trapped. They were remembered. "You built your altars on my skin," the voice said, slow and low, echoing through the shifting walls. "And forgot what you sealed." The floor rippled beneath her. The air turned warm again, almost kind. "Now you will listen." Her body locked in place. The hum returned, low, harmonic, resonant, growing louder until it filled her entirely. She felt her heartbeat merge with it, her breath sinking to its rhythm, her thoughts scattering. Then came images, not seen but felt. Cities carved into lungs of stone, rivers flowing through veins, voices of ancient builders whispering prayers in languages that had no sound. The mountain was showing her memory. Not human memory, but the memory of matter itself, the echo of the first vibration, the first sound that shaped the earth. Her mouth opened to scream, but all that left her was a note, clear, steady, almost beautiful. The mountain was using her voice. When she tried to step back, her limbs didn't move. She could feel her skin cooling, stiffening, hardening. The stone was growing through her. Her last thought before she fell completely still was of her father, the priest who had taught her to listen for God in silence. She finally understood. The silence was God, and he was still breathing. When the team from Lima arrived a month later, they expected debris, a collapsed ruin, maybe bodies buried under stone. What they found instead was air too still to be air at all, an atmosphere heavy enough to feel tactile, as if silence had density. The camp was intact. The instruments lay where they had been placed. Food had spoiled in the open, but no one was there. Not a footprint, not a drag mark, not even the signs of animals. Only the hum remained. It was faint, almost below hearing, a vibration more than sound. It pulsed every 12 seconds, low and even, felt through the chest more than heard by the ear. One of the technicians said it reminded him of a heartbeat slowed beyond life. Inside the church, the stone altar had cracked down the middle. The fissure was clean, geometric, too perfect to be caused by stress. The crack extended downward into the mountain itself, forming a narrow gap that exhaled a steady warmth. When they lowered a microphone, the signal came back distorted. No wind, no movement, only sound. Not random, not mechanical, but organized. Slow harmonic waves forming chords that shifted with impossible precision. The team leader ordered the retrieval of the recording. The technician listened through headphones, and within moments, his eyes went wide. He pulled them off and stepped away, his skin pale, voice trembling. "It's not noise, it's voices." They replayed the reel through an external monitor. The sound filled the air of the ruined nave, low, layered tones that built into something like a chant. But there were no words. The rhythm matched the breathing pattern of a human sleeper. Every exhale carried harmony, every inhale silence. One of the engineers recognized the pattern, 3 long notes. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. They left the church at dusk. No one spoke on the way down. The following morning, one of them, Valdez, returned alone. He said he couldn't stop hearing it, the tone vibrating in his skull like a song half remembered. He said it felt unfinished. They found his recorder near the altar that afternoon. It contained 3 minutes of silence. Then a voice, his own, whispering something almost too soft to understand. "It breathes with us." Then a second voice, lower, older, matching him word for word. "It breathes with us." The sound cut off. The recorder continued running for another 11 minutes, picking up only faint clicks. When amplified, the clicks formed a rhythm, not mechanical but organic, like the soft contraction of muscle under strain. The device's temperature gauge showed a brief spike. Then the battery melted. By the time the retrieval team reached base, Valdez was gone. The rest refused to stay another night. The official report listed the incident as geological resonance interference. The site was closed, declared unsafe due to structural instability. But 2 months later, the same hum was detected 70 kilometers away, deep beneath another ridge of the Andes. Then again, further north. Always the same pattern. Always 3, 2, 3. When the ministry asked for analysis, one physicist compared the waveforms and concluded that the signals weren't moving through the Earth. They were synchronizing through it, as though the entire range were resonating with a shared frequency. He wrote one line at the end of his report before resigning. "It's not spreading, it's waking." After that, the government sealed every document related to Santa Veronica del Abismo. The name was struck from records, the coordinates erased. But in the villages that dotted the lower valleys, shepherds began to tell stories of nights when the mountains whispered, when the ground seemed to breathe. They said the sound wasn't frightening. It was tender, like someone humming to themselves in sleep. And sometimes, if you pressed your ear to the soil, you could hear a heartbeat answer yours. By the time anyone returned to Santa Veronica del Abismo, the ruins were almost entirely gone. The church's walls had sunk into the slope, the bell tower lay half buried, and the entire valley hummed faintly like a machine hidden beneath the ground. No vegetation grew there anymore. Even moss refused the stone. The air carried a strange shimmer when sunlight crossed it, as if distorted by heat, though the temperature remained cold. The team that arrived in 1956 wasn't composed of archaeologists or priests this time. It was a unit from the Ministerio de Energía y Minas, operating under a false survey order. Their equipment wasn't for digging, but for measuring sound. 3 men and 1 woman, engineer Julio Frias, Dr. Miriam Kolke, and 2 soldiers assigned as escort. They were told only that they were investigating subterranean resonance phenomena. No one mentioned the prior expedition. They reached the site in late May. Even before setting up camp, Frias noted that the valley's air pressure was inconsistent. Readings fluctuated every few seconds as though the atmosphere were exhaling. That night, they couldn't sleep. The hum was everywhere, soft and slow, rising through the ground, matching the rhythm of human breath. The soldiers joked about it until one of them realized his own breathing had unconsciously synchronized with it. When they descended into the ruins at dawn, the entrance tunnel was open again. The crack in the altar had widened, its edges smoothed by heat. The descent was steep, deeper than any expected structural depth. The walls glistened faintly. Veins of mineral shimmered through the rock, gold, silver, and something else, a material that reflected no color, only motion. The deeper they went, the clearer the sound became, a layered harmony that shifted subtly, never repeating exactly, like an endless exhale drawn through invisible lungs. They found the circular chamber unchanged. The air was dry, sterile. At the center, the stone slab still hovered, suspended over its dark reflection. When Frias placed his sensor near it, the device began to hum at the same frequency, the metal vibrating in sympathy. The readings went off scale. "Doctor," Kolke whispered, "it's alive." Her voice was calm, reverent. Then something new appeared on the monitor, a secondary wave pattern overlapping the main resonance. It pulsed irregularly, like speech hidden in the sound. Frias isolated it, slowed it. The pattern became distinct, intervals too structured to be geological. When converted to audible frequency, the chamber filled with soft, pulsing tones. It sounded like someone breathing inside a metal pipe, low and resonant. Then, within the tone, another sound began, faint, rhythmic, deliberate. A heartbeat. Freya stepped back. "It's a body," he whispered. "We're inside a body." The soldiers laughed uneasily, but the humor died quickly when the lights flickered and the ground pulsed beneath their boots. The hovering slab began to shift again. This time it didn't unfold like before. It rotated slowly, aligning with the carved lines in the walls. Each rotation triggered a change in the pitch of the hum, forming something like melody. Dr. Kolke's recorder captured her voice trembling. "It's communicating." Then the sound deepened. A subsonic wave so powerful it shook dust from the ceiling but made no noise to the human ear. Every instrument went dead. And then, from the pit below the slab, light began to rise. It wasn't illumination. It was reflection, something glowing beneath the surface of the liquid, as if the stone itself were exhaling brightness. The light expanded, rippling across the walls, tracing the same spiral forms Elena Rivas had once described. And within that glow, faint shapes emerged. Faces, arms, human outlines pressing outward from inside the stone, moving as though submerged in slow current. One of the soldiers screamed and ran for the exit. The others followed. Only Frias and Doctor Kolke remained, frozen in place. The light folded inward again, concentrating at the center of the slab. The hum softened to a whisper, and for a moment, it almost sounded like words. "Below is never beneath." Frias fell to his knees. His skin was pale, eyes wide, whispering, "It's not under us. It's around us." Then everything stopped. No sound, no light. The mountain fell completely silent. The soldiers who escaped waited at camp until dawn. Neither engineer returned. The next afternoon, a low tremor shook the entire ridge. Rocks collapsed over the ruins. The entrance sealed itself with a slow, grinding sigh. When the ministry returned weeks later, the valley was gone. The entire slope had shifted, replacing the site with smooth stone. In the official record, the disappearance was listed as geological failure due to erosion. But those who lived near the foothills began hearing the hum again 2 nights later, deep and patient, moving through the soil. The shepherd said it sounded different now, not like a breath, not like a song, like a voice trying to remember a name. It was almost 10 years before anyone dared mention the name Santa Veronica del Abismo again. The archives in Lima had buried the reports under geology and seismic research, the kind of bureaucratic camouflage that erases a story by drowning it in paper. Only one person kept asking questions: Dr. Ana Morales, a historian specializing in colonial architecture. In 1964, she found fragments of Elena Rivas's field logs in a damaged crate mislabeled Botanica. 1932. The pages were warped from humidity, the ink faded, but a few sentences survived. "The mountain is not stone. It is memory made solid. We entered its breath." Something ancient was sealed here, not to protect us from it, but it from us. Anna didn't believe in superstition. She believed in data, structure, and the stubborn persistence of truth in ruins. When she traced the location, she found nothing. The coordinates placed her in the middle of smooth rock, as if the valley had never existed. Still, she went. The road was gone, but the land remembered where it had been. She followed it until dusk, when the air turned colder and the world went quiet. Not the stillness of altitude, the heavy, attentive silence of a place that recognized her arrival. The first thing she noticed was the sound of her own breathing. It came back to her strangely delayed, as if someone else were inhaling and exhaling just behind her. She set up her tent near the slope, took barometric readings, and noted nothing unusual. But her notebook shook slightly on the ground, as if trembling to a rhythm too deep to feel. That night, she woke to the sound of dripping water. She thought it was rain. When she stepped outside, the sky was clear. The stars above were so bright, they made the mountain look hollow. The dripping continued. It wasn't water. It was sound condensed into rhythm. Single, slow drops echoing across the valley like a metronome keeping time for something beneath the earth. She followed it with her flashlight. The beam struck a patch of stone near the base of the slope that shimmered faintly. Wet not from moisture but from reflection, as though the rock were made of glass. When she crouched beside it, the ground vibrated softly. "It's breathing," she whispered, not meaning to. Her own voice returned to her seconds later, slower, deeper. "It's breathing." She froze. The echo wasn't hers. The intonation was different. Calm, curious, almost kind. Then came the hum. It started beneath her knees and moved through her body until it filled her chest. The mountain's rhythm and her pulse became one. Something in the stone began to glow faintly. Not light, but color. A deep amber radiance spreading outward in perfect circles. Anna pressed her hand to it. The vibration grew stronger. The circles shifted, aligning with the pulse of her touch. Then she heard it, a chorus of faint voices rising together from below. Not singing, not crying, but murmuring in a tone that moved like wind over hollow ground. She understood none of the words, but one sound repeated through all of them. Abajo, below. The word rolled upward like a breath leaving centuries of silence. Aina stepped back, terrified but unable to run. The stone under her palm was warm, almost flesh-warm. She turned to leave. The air thickened. Behind her, the hum deepened until the ground began to tremble softly, like something large shifting in its sleep. The reflection in the rock rippled again. Her flashlight beam caught a shape beneath the surface. Not her face, not even human. A vast outline. Curved. Organic. Something like a rib cage. It filled the mountain's interior, each line faintly luminous, pulsing once every few seconds. A heartbeat. She fell to her knees, breath shallow, eyes locked on the moving glow. Then, faintly, through the hum, came a single voice. Deeper than sound, but somehow close enough to touch. You keep coming back. Her light died. The hum stopped. Only the echo of that sentence remained, repeating softly in her skull long after the silence returned. When she woke the next morning, her tent was gone. Her notebook lay open beside her, every page blank except for one, written in her own hand, though she didn't remember writing it. It breathes the shape of those who listen. She walked down the valley without looking back. By the time she reached the village, her hair had turned completely white. Dr. Ana Morales never returned to academia. She left the university 2 months after her expedition and spent the rest of her life in near silence, living alone on the outskirts of Arequipa. Neighbors said she rarely spoke, though at night they sometimes heard humming, soft, low tones that rose and fell with the rhythm of breath. Her letters stopped in 1968. Only one, written to an old colleague in Cusco, survived. It contained a single line: "The mountain remembers through us." For decades, that was all anyone knew. The valley itself vanished again beneath landslides and earthquakes. The archives rotted in humidity. The name Santa Veronica del Abismo dissolved into the footnotes of lost Peruvian settlements. Until 1999. That year, a team of mining surveyors discovered an anomaly beneath the Huaytapallana range, a hollow chamber nearly 400 meters below solid granite, emitting persistent low-frequency vibrations. The signal repeated every 8 seconds, steady, measurable, identical to the pattern recorded in 1954. When the engineers sent seismic probes into the fissure, the readings returned impossible results. The sound didn't reflect. It absorbed. The chamber swallowed every signal as though consuming it. One technician, a young intern named Luis Cardenas, recognized the name in the archival references and found the old sealed reports. He became obsessed with the idea that the resonance wasn't geological at all, but something organic, the continuation of whatever had been found beneath Santa Veronica. He convinced 3 colleagues to descend through the fissure under the pretext of recalibrating sensors. The last transmission from their line recorder is time-stamped 02:14 a.m. At first, all that could be heard was dripping water. Then came a hum, soft and layered. Luis whispered, "It's inside the rock." The sound grew louder, matching his words, modulating in perfect sync with his voice until each syllable echoed twice. His and something older, deeper, mimicking him with inhuman precision. One of the engineers panicked. "Turn it off, Luis!" The recording captured him shouting again. "It's under us, it's—" Then a shift. The tone changed pitch. The microphones distorted as though pressed against vibrating metal. And then came the phrase, quiet, but unmistakable. Not under. Within. The sound cut abruptly. Seismic sensors on the surface recorded a pulse strong enough to trigger tremors across 3 kilometers. When rescue teams arrived, the fissure had sealed completely. No bodies were found, no instruments, just smooth stone. The ministry labeled it collapse due to instability. But 3 days later, vibrations were recorded again, not from the site, but from within the walls of a nearby laboratory. The walls themselves resonated, faint but precise, reproducing the same rhythm. 3, 2, 3. A week later, the hum appeared in the mining station's ventilation ducts, then in water pipes, then, impossibly, inside the concrete foundation of the dormitories. The phenomenon spread without movement. It didn't travel through space. It manifested wherever people spoke its name. The workers called it La Voz del Abismo. The engineers abandoned the station. The few who stayed described nights when the floor seemed to breathe under their cots, slow and regular, as if mimicking the rhythm of sleep. One survivor, Eduardo Limachi, the last to leave, later told a reporter that before he fled, he heard something new. The hum stopped for the first time. Then a whisper came through the walls, soft as wind through hollow stone. The room remembers you. He left the camp that night. No one ever went back. By 2002, seismic readings across the Andes began showing brief, faint pulses matching the same harmonic ratio. The events were never simultaneous, but coordinated, as though each mountain took turns breathing. Satellite imagery picked up slight shifts in terrain pressure, rhythmic, repeating. When asked to explain, a geophysicist wrote in his report, "If this were geological, it would suggest the mountain range itself is oscillating. An impossible event unless the entire crust were alive." The report was dismissed as instrument miscalibration. But a week later, at dawn, residents of a remote town near Huancavelica awoke to what they swore was the sound of singing echoing from beneath the earth. Not choir, not wind, a single note, deep and patient. They said it sounded like breath turned into memory. By the early 2000s, La Voz del Abismo had become a superstition among miners. Some said it was pressure in the bedrock. Others swore the mountain itself was speaking, not in words, but in the rhythm of living things. The hum came and went with no warning, sometimes faint as the sound of breath behind a wall, sometimes strong enough to shake dust from ceilings. In 2005, an experimental team from the Instituto Geodinámico de Lima decided to test the phenomenon. They placed vibration sensors across 6 peaks of the central Andes. The data arrived that night. 6 distinct signals, each separated by several kilometers, all perfectly synchronized to the same harmonic ratio, 3.2.3. The resonance wasn't random. It was patterned, deliberate. But what truly unsettled the researchers was what happened when they played the waveforms through speakers. The sound produced a pressure that changed the air temperature by fractions of a degree, enough to fog the glass of the observation window. When they stopped playback, the fog didn't fade. It remained, and within it, faintly, something else formed. A rhythm, too soft to hear, but visible as condensation pulsing on the surface of the glass. The lead researcher, Dr. Ignacio Villar, tried to explain it. The signal was interfering with humidity somehow, aligning molecular movement into rhythmic displacement. He was wrong. When they replayed the data, the condensation on the window began to move before the sound started. It was anticipating the tone. That night, the lab recorded the sound without any equipment running. The building itself had begun to hum. Technicians swore they heard breathing through the ventilation ducts. Others described low, wordless murmurs rising from the walls. The cleaning staff quit after finding faint handprints pressed into the concrete floor, small and round, as though formed from inside the slab. Villa refused to stop the experiment. He argued that they had uncovered a global acoustic resonance, the Earth's hidden respiration. He began referring to it as the pulse. When questioned by colleagues, he said something that unsettled them all. If the mountains breathe, then so do we. And if they remember, so must we. 2 days later, he sealed himself in the chamber and activated the playback alone. When the others forced the door open an hour later, the room was empty. His clothes lay neatly folded on the chair. His body was never found. Only the fog remained, hovering waist-high, pulsating gently in the same slow rhythm. 3, 2, 3. The government shut the lab down, but the data didn't disappear. It traveled quietly through universities, archives, even online forums. Within a year, audio enthusiasts across South America began experimenting with the frequency. Some claimed to hear whispers when played at low volume. Others said it altered the air around them, that it felt like someone was in the room, breathing with them. One field recording, posted anonymously under the name ER, was said to have been captured near the original site of Santa Veronica dell'Abismo. The file lasted only 47 seconds. The first 30 were silence. Then a deep hum rose, steady, organic. At second 39, a faint voice entered beneath the frequency. Indistinct, almost a vibration itself. When filtered through spectrogram analysis, the waveform revealed a repeating pattern. Not words, but the outline of letters. In mirrored sequence, written by vibration itself, it spelled one sentence in Spanish. No abriste la puerta. You didn't open the door. Listeners reported strange sensations. Air pressure in their ears, a sense of warmth in their chest, and an afterimage of faint amber light when they closed their eyes. The file was deleted within hours, but it had already been downloaded thousands of times. And for weeks afterward, those who had played it described the same thing. At night, just before sleep, they would feel the rhythm beneath their ribs shift slightly, breathing slowing, aligning, until their lungs exhaled in time with something that wasn't their own body. The hum followed them into dreams. It wasn't sound anymore. It was memory searching for shape. By the time the world stopped listening, the sound had already learned to continue without them. In 2011, a research satellite measuring ionospheric vibration over South America captured something that defied explanation. A low, harmonic pulse rising through the atmosphere from the Andes, repeating every 12 seconds. It was faint, structured, and self-correcting. When interfered with by solar radiation, it adjusted its own frequency to maintain resonance. The technicians didn't know what to call it. They labeled it Event A31, but the archived notes carried a more human name in the margin. El aliento que recuerda, the breath that remembers. The signal continued for 38 minutes before vanishing abruptly. Hours later, seismographs in Cusco registered a faint echo from beneath the Huaytapallana range. Identical pattern, identical ratio. 3, 2, 3, the same heartbeat. After that, the world grew quieter. Not literally, but the static of existence, the perpetual hum of machines and cities, began to sound different to those who knew what to listen for. As if something vast had shifted just beneath the surface of perception. Years passed. The recordings faded into folklore, into small academic circles, into nothing, until one man found it again. In 2023, a field acoustician named Rafael Peña began cataloging unexplained infrasound events along the western Andes. Late one night, while reviewing a tape from a wind survey, he noticed a faint harmonic structure buried beneath the data. He isolated the waveform, amplified it, and heard what he later described as a chord played by stone. It was soft, almost gentle, but when he filtered the upper layers, something else surfaced. A voice, blurred and patient. It spoke only once. We remember your breath. Raphael stared at the waveform on his monitor, the peaks and valleys forming perfect symmetry. It looked like a ribcage. He left the lab, walked outside, and listened to the mountains. He swore they were breathing. The next morning, the recording was gone. Every copy deleted, the original reel melted. The lab claimed a power surge. But when technicians inspected the backup drives, they found one remaining file, blank except for a single low hum that persisted for exactly 47 seconds before fading into complete silence. And at the end of that silence, buried just above the noise floor, came the smallest sound, a single inhale, then a whisper. It's open now. Weeks later, tremors rippled quietly across the Andes, so subtle that only seismologists noticed. The readings were synchronized again, one pulse at a time, from peak to peak, like the slow rhythm of lungs exhaling through stone. In villages scattered along the slopes, old shepherds said they heard humming in the wind. Some swore they saw dust rising in spirals from the valleys, turning briefly gold under the morning light. No one believed them. But when they pressed their ears to the ground, the air inside the earth sounded alive again. And somewhere beneath the skin of the mountains, deeper than memory, the forbidden room still waited. Sealed and unsealed all at once, a breath held for centuries, finally released into a world that no longer knew how to listen. 3, 2, 3. then stillness. Perfect Patient Infinite